Those of you that want to tell me that Dak Prescott isn't good enough, you're right. He's not good enough to overcome a gutless effort that his entire team showed. Almost everyone. And he's damn sure not good enough to overcome a lack of preparation from both sides of the football that completely broke tendency. You get to the playoffs, and then you inexplicably stop doing what got you there. We're also going to talk about the real curse of the Cowboys. That could be a little bit different than you might think, but just walk with me here for a second. I want to start with Dan Quinn because I do have a lot of questions. 3rd and 9, the beginning of the ball game. You've got Micah Parsons, who is, of course, your best pass rusher, dropping into coverage. And most people who punch back on the thought of playing Micah more off ball to try and help DQ overcome some of his personnel inadequacies, right? And the main argument against that was that he is your best pass rusher, and you don't ever want to take him off of the edge. And the issue with that assumption is that you're wrong if you think that he can't rush the quarterback from the middle or from the second level.
You can still rush the quarterback from the middle of the field as well. You can have the best of both worlds. And he's actually this season been most effective doing so from the middle. And just watch this play right here. Micah, because you got to earn the right to rush the quarterback first. You got to prove that you can stop the run. That's Buffalo about that. You tell me how effective that Micah was that day, strictly at edge. Right? He's an elite pursuer of the ball carrier from the second level. He's an elite pass rusher. Okay? But he's not elite at all as a run defender from the edge. So if you stick him at edge, you're eliminating one of Micah's superpowers. Whereas if you put him in the middle, he's inevitable.
Rushing the passer and pursuing the ball carrier. When you put him in the middle, he can do both things. You can't scheme away from him, or it's at least a lot more difficult to do so. That's issue number 1. Why is your best pass rusher dropping into coverage, moving backwards when you have a chance to get your defense off the field? Okay. Secondly, 3rd and 4. Once again, early on in the ball game, you have a chance to get a stop. I think these two things actually occurred on the same possession. You'll see the video here. I'll pull those clips for you. You've got your all-pro cornerback, DaRon Bland, 3rd and 4, about 12 yards off the ball against a rookie tight end nonetheless. Explain that one to me. Of course, it goes for an easy completion for a first down. Chains keep moving. Now, I do want to be fair to DQ, okay? Because a lot of the conversation that I'm seeing early on Twitter right now in the social media world is, well, the Cowboys broke tendency on defense, which they did. And they're blaming DQ for, number 1, favoring zone coverage. We'll talk about why he potentially did that in just a second. But that tree, right, the Kyle Shanahan tree, they run condensed formations often. That's what they major in. Those condensed sets essentially not force, but encourage you to not play man coverage because of the traffic, right? It's difficult to navigate through when everything is tight and condensed. There's a lot of stuff happening, got misdirection things and traffic, okay? They cause chaos. It's designed that way for a reason. So once again, that's DQ's kryptonite. Okay, so credit to LaFleur and the Packers for not only executing, but for masterminding a game plan that they knew that this defense wasn't capable of overcoming. You guys probably saw the tweet about Dan Quinn in his Super Bowl run with the Falcons. 3 members on his offensive staff on that team. Names you guys are probably very familiar with. 3 of the best play callers in football right now. Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel. He's 0-6, those 3 guys in his career. Dan Quinn, that is. Okay. Now, that's one statistic. It's a team sport, right? There's a lot of missing context there, I'm sure of it. But number 2, maybe most importantly, having 6 defensive backs on the field for most of that game against a team that you know is going to come out with 12 personnel and run the football. Talked about that too in my preview, but it was the second bullet point. But I want to be fair to Dan Quinn, okay? He at least has the excuse of inadequate personnel. Unlike Mike McCarthy, who we'll talk about in just a second. Dan Quinn can't control that Mozzie Smith just simply isn't ready yet to make the transition from college to pro and be an every down, A-gap run defender. That's their first round pick. DQ also can't control his third-round draft pick, DeMarvion Overshown, tearing his ACL before the season even starts. Right? He can't control that Leighton Vander Esch is off the field for most of the season because of a neck issue that's probably going to end his career. And he can't control that he has no choice but to put an undrafted free agent safety, Marquise Bell, at linebacker. You can make the argument he didn't make the adjustment, right? And that goes back to the whole conversation about putting Micah Moore off ball. There were things that could have been attempted when you've got teams like the Bills laying the Buffalo blueprint, as we called it. Manuel Acho did a great job of explaining exactly why.
Because defensive backs don't play linebacker. When number 81 goes across the formation, number 33, he has to fit outside of 85. Number 14, Bell, safety, has to fit inside of 85. Number 1, Curse, safety, has to fit where number 14 is. But what happens instead? Number 14 does not come back across the formation. Number 1, Curse, doesn't come back across the formation. But they're safeties, family. They're not used to this run picture.
And once again, back to my second bullet point. Against a team and heavy personnel that you know is going to want to run the football, you absolutely have to be disciplined when they're going to utilize motion in the ground game. Another key of mine that Mike McCarthy just refused to stick with. But again, we'll get to him in a second. When men are motioning at the snap, they are changing your gap responsibility in the run fits. So it requires extra attention to detail in the cutback lanes. And we talked about Aaron Jones' the vision. That's his superpower. You got burned. Now, Mike McCarthy, that coin. We know this team wants to start fast. Okay? They're really good at doing that. And when they do, they can overwhelm you with their pass rush and when they're off with their offense. But there's a recurring theme here. That what did we try to do as an offense? Or more specifically, what didn't we do? You guys have heard me say this all offseason and all season long. The things that we predicted would take Dak Prescott from leading the league in interceptions a year ago into, once again, a potential MVP and all-pro player. Motion at the snap. Marrying that with your pass and your run game. Bunch formations. Natural rubs, shallow crossers, bringing the horizontal element of the passing game back to Dallas.
Thank God we're finally going to start to see receivers running across the field and stretching defenses horizontally with mesh concepts on drags and crossers. This helps with Yak tremendously.
It worked, and it helped. But why did he look so pedestrian, confused, out of sync with his alpha receiver, hesitant? You saw the wide eyes, right? We see a time or two in his career. Okay, not much this year, but definitely in that game. Why? Why, Mike McCarthy, did your offense once again revert back to its conservative ways against quality opponents when they take away the over-the-top stuff and try to eliminate your big play offense from big playing, the too high shell stuff, right? You've got to be able to methodically move your way down the football field and force them out of that.
And once again, against a quality opponent in a hostile environment, their pre-snap motion and their play action percentage both plummeted. And I'm not exactly sure why. Crowd noise should not change the identity of who you are.
Beyond that, once again, more importantly, stagnant pre-snap, no motion on the first two possessions of the game. Shotgun, no motion, and the same old inefficient run game. Hey, let's not put Tony in the gun next to Dak and go inside zone. There's a reason why that was the focal point of my preview. What did we do? Okay, the second play of that game, the Cowboys went 13 personnel, which I don't recall seeing much, if at all. It's 2nd and 8. You got 3 tight ends on the field. Your best player outside of your quarterback, CeeDee Lamb, is on the sideline. Going against what works, being stagnant before the ball snapped, and putting literally everything on the plate of your quarterback. You can't run the football. You definitely can't do it from the gun.
Another part of the problem was not getting TP to the edge quite enough. His superpower, simply put, is building ahead of steam in the zone stretch game, finding the hole, putting his foot in the ground, and getting straight downhill. And Dak's in the gun with TP next to him, and you're stagnant before and after the ball is snapped. It doesn't work for this team. Take a wild guess at which 2 games this season the Cowboys offense motioned the fewest. I'll give you a sec. Yeah, San Fran and Buffalo. Let me show you exactly what I mean right here. It doesn't work. The solution, like I said, in my head is very simple. You marry the passing game with your cerebral quarterback who is one of the best in the business right now because of the amount of football that he's seen. You can't fool him pre-snap if you give him the information. And that information can be simplified in really one word, and that's motion.
This right here is what we need more of, okay? Not only is it giving your quarterback information, it's forcing the defense to communicate and creating leverage, but with this motion in particular with Cook, widening the formation. It's exit motion, okay? As opposed to condensing it in the traditional, jet motion fashion.
All year long, we were trying to figure out the run game. And just when it finally looked like we were figuring things out, we didn't stick to it. And we couldn't punish teams on the ground enough to keep them out of that too high shell.
Make that make sense. Now to Dak Prescott. Like I said, he was terrible. He did look confused, hesitant, and he was inaccurate. Okay, but every good offense has a built-in fail-safe. If their quarterback, for whatever reason, has a bad day, what can you fall back on? What do they always say travels in the postseason? Run game, defense. We didn't do any of those two things on Sunday. Okay. Why is our alpha receiver pouting in the first quarter?
Now, the first thing is this effort right here is not good enough. And it will get you beat in January.
Okay. And that's the whole thing about Dak. Right? Even if he was all-pro caliber Dak Prescott in that game on Sunday, can anybody sitting here, myself included, any of us, can we confidently sit here and say that it would have been enough to overcome the performance that we saw on the defensive side of the ball? I can't. Jordan Love is currently the all-time leader in quarterback rating in the postseason. Now, granted, that's only one game, but that just goes to show you how immaculate of a performance that was. How easy they made it look. Number one all time. Most playoff points surrendered in Dallas Cowboys history. Is that Force's fault? I know a bunch of you are inevitably going to still just say you're ready for change and you're ready to get him up out of here. And I'm not here to say that you're wrong for that. What I am here to say is I would still caution against that thought process. But a lot of that stems from what you're up against if you do decide to move on. Just make sure you know that if you cut him, you're essentially eating $30 million. As of today, this team doesn't have a left tackle. This team doesn't have a center. This team definitely doesn't have enough linebackers. We don't have a running back. You need a cornerback too. Stephon Gilmore's not under contract next year. And yeah, Trey Diggs, he's likely coming back, barring some sort of unforeseen setback. But we all know how those ACLs go, man. Skill positions especially, it's really year 2 post-injury that you're officially back to 100% of your former self. Okay, so unless you want to risk purgatory and competing and trying to go all in one more time with Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, your core, those guys. Who's to say how long it'll take for you to kind of reconstruct your roster and get back to this point, to being able to win 12 games every year. Okay. Now you don't have to forfeit a season. You really don't. You can flip the script and very quickly. That brings me back to the moral of this story here. And I'm going to put a bow on this thing with this because you guys have been waiting. I told you I would talk to you about the real curse. And the first thing that you have to acknowledge is that if you're pointing the finger at one person as far as responsibility for all this, I think you're wrong. But the Dallas Cowboys, and I'm realizing this as time goes, and it's something that I've actually been thinking of for a long time. Okay. They don't have to win, the players that is, to be relevant. Okay. I just want to read you this tweet right here. And then it's up for you to decide. Like I said, spent a lot of time thinking about this all season, and my initial post-mortem recap tweet hinted at this. Okay. The real curse of the Dallas Cowboys is that their players don't have to win to be relevant. Which means that if toughness, physicality, and accountability aren't pillars of your coaches, coordinators, and your scouts, then you might be fighting an uphill battle. Now, please forgive me if that speculation is reckless, and also keep in mind that it absolutely does not apply to everybody in that building. But the tape and the effort from yesterday's game definitely won't disagree. Moral of the story is, and once again, based on my own experience in professional sports, different players are in it for different reasons. I think there's some serious soul searching that has to happen. And in my own personal opinion, the organization from the top down must relentlessly prioritize the intangibles in their player evals and in their coaches as well, as they likely enter the coaching search. And if you want my honest opinion, yes, I think as of this current moment, the unpreparedness and the tendency breaking for Mike McCarthy and Dan Quinn both are fireable offensive. Now, remember that Kyle Shanahan tree we talked about a little bit earlier? Yeah. There's another guy that's also from that same tree. His name is Bobby Slowick. He's currently in Houston right now. Maybe you've heard of him. I ain't saying. I'm just saying. But, like I said, the intangibles, there has to be a relentless focus on those things. You want guys that completely get it out the mud. Everything has to be under a microscope for this entire operation moving forward. Otherwise, that country club Cowboys narrative isn't going away anytime soon. And it's not just about the players. It takes everyone.